Hello everyone, Amy Wilbanks here with Textile Fabric Consultants. Today we'll be learning how to properly investigate the yarn types in your swatch kit, specifically those made of spun and filament yarns. These yarn types comprise most of the fabrics in the kit. Others included are variations of these and novelty yarns, all of which will be discussed in a separate video. Please note that we will be referencing Textiles by Kadoff and Marchetti, and page numbers will be given on the bottom of the screen when direct quotes are used. It's important to have a good understanding of yarns, as most apparel and interior fabrics are produced from yarns. Let's start by learning how spun and filament yarns are created. A filament yarn is created by extruding the fibrous solution through a spinneret head, as shown on the screen. The spinneret head creates long, continuous strands of single yarns that are grouped together or twisted together. A spun yarn is composed of short staple fibers that are twisted or bonded together. Spun yarn manufacturing often takes advantage of fiber irregularities and natural cohesiveness to bind the fibers together into one yarn. Now that we have a working definition of the two yarn types, we can discuss the differences between them. On the screen you can see an example of a filament yarn, which is made of long, continuous strands of fiber. This leads to a yarn that shows no breakage along its length. Filament yarns can widely vary based on bulking, texturing, and twisting processes used, but for the purposes of this video, we will be focusing on smooth filament yarns. Smooth filament yarns are characterized by their uniformity and smoothness as a result of straight, near parallel fibers. If we compare this to a spun yarn, you can see that they have a fuzzy texture. This appearance is caused by the ends of short staple fibers which protrude along the yarn's length. Having covered the basic differences between these yarn types, we will now learn to identify them in the fabrics. We will start by laying out a basic 4-step checklist of things to do. First, you'll examine the fabric surface. Second, you'll locate the fiber content of the fabric on your master list. Third, you'll pull multiple yarns from both the warp and filling directions. And fourth, you will examine these yarns closely. Now let's break these steps down, starting with surface examination. Simply look and feel at the entire swatch. Is it smooth? Is it fuzzy? Is it dull or is it shiny? How does it reflect light? Fabrics that are made of spun yarns will tend to be more dull and fuzzy, whereas smooth, shiny fabrics are more than likely made of smooth filament yarns. A lot of information can be gathered from a simple surface examination. It is not enough to determine the yarn type for certain, however, so let's move on to fiber content. You can find a swatch's fiber content in the far right column of your master list pages. All 100% natural fibers, except for silk, will always be comprised of spun yarns. This includes fabrics that are 100% wool, 100% cotton, 100% flax, etc. Silk is the only natural fiber that can be made of either spun or filament yarns. So seeing that a fabric is 100% silk does not tell you anything of its yarn type. The same goes for fabrics made from manufactured, regenerated, or recycled fibers. Basically, swatches that have fiber contents that are not 100% natural fibers, except for silk, will need further examination to determine the yarn type. That takes us to step 3. Now you'll pull yarns from the swatch. When doing so, you should not only pull multiple yarns, but multiple yarns from both the warp and filling directions. This is important as fabrics with more complex yarn content can have a different type in each direction or different types in a single direction. So judging the yarn type off a single yarn or even a single yarn from both the warp and filling may be inadequate for determining yarn type. Another thing to be aware of when you're pulling yarns is if the fabric has a coating, as pieces of the coating will often pull off and remain adhered to yarns. This can easily add an element of confusion when inspecting yarns, so be aware of this and if possible scrape off excess coating of your yarns before inspection. One quick test you can do before further inspection is twisting and pulling your yarn. Simply grab the yarn on both ends and twist in the opposite direction of its manufactured twist, and gently pull. Spun yarns should easily come apart, whereas smooth filament yarns will not. This is not a foolproof method, but it is a handy trick to help you possibly learn the yarn type. Now you're finally ready for step 4, examining your yarns closely. This is best done under magnification or at least in ample light, using a tool such as a stitch counter included in the basic textile swatch kit. You will also want a pointed object to prod the yarn such as a yarn pick, needle, safety pin, mechanical pencil, etc. to separate individual fibers for examination. Yarn picks and stitch counters, as well as an LED version with bright, built-in lighting, can be individually purchased on our website. Our website is linked in the description if you would like more information. Now that you have a pointed tool and your yarns under magnification, you can examine them to determine yarn type. As previously mentioned, spun yarns will have a fuzzy, textured appearance with clearly visible fiber ends, whereas smooth filament yarns will appear completely smooth. There shouldn't be any visible fiber ends for a filament yarn, except for at the ends of the yarn itself. Looking for these fiber ends will signal which yarn type it is, but it is even better if you can separate a single individual fiber. This will show for certain if a yarn has short staple fibers along its length or one continuous long fiber in the yarn to denote a filament yarn. So now that we've covered how to determine the yarn type of spun and filament yarn-based fabrics, how is this information applicable in the real world? Well, first, as we discussed, outward appearance and light reflectivity are greatly affected by yarn type. If you're a textile designer looking to order fabric for an evening gown, you will most likely want a fabric that has a considerable sheen to it. By understanding basic yarn types, you know this narrows your search to fabrics comprised of filament yarns. Another important thing in the application of this information is skin feel. The fuzzy protruding ends of spun yarns prevent spun yarn fabrics from making close contact with the skin. This makes it more comfortable next to the skin than a fabric of smooth filament yarn. If you're an interior designer, you'll want to choose fabrics that are both visually appealing in the room setting and comfortable against the skin. Once again, knowing how yarn type affects these attributes is invaluable and will make choosing fabrics much quicker and easier. Hopefully this video has been helpful in learning to identify yarn types, as well as applying this information in your textile studies and career. If you're stumped trying to learn the yarn type of a fabric in your swatch kit, or have questions or need more information, please feel free to contact me using the information on the screen. I'll be glad to help you. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as we'll have more videos in the future, like our upcoming Novelty Yarns video. Thanks so much for watching.